Hey everybody. The Upper Room reflection for today, Thursday, October 26th, is based on the prophet Isaiah, the book attributed to Isaiah, and this is chapter 41, verses 8 through 10. And God is speaking in these few verses and says, "But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, you descendants of Abraham, my friend, I took you from the ends of the earth, from its farthest corners I called you. I said, you are my servant. I have chosen you and have not rejected you. So do not fear, for I am with you." Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. And since it's just 3 verses, I'd like to read it in the Message version as well. But God, the way God speaks to God's people through Isaiah, that we're called servant, chosen ones, and friends of God. Right? That God has not rejected us. Right? He calls Abraham his friend, and Jesus says to his disciples, "I call you my friends, for I have shown you everything that my Father has given me for you." And we're in this together, right? He says, "You're not servants. We're friends." This goes much deeper than a master-servant relationship, right? And this is a love relationship that God has called us to, and just as God called the people of Israel, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God has called us. God has called the world to be saved by grace through faith. And I think of that as grace is like oxygen. It's everywhere and freely available. But faith is like lungs. If you don't have lungs, you can't metabolize the oxygen. You can't benefit from all the oxygen that's free floating in our environment that is meant for our flourishing. And grace is the oxygen that we need. And our faith is what activates it. Our faith are the lungs, the spiritual lungs that allow us to breathe in the oxygen of God's grace and be made alive, be filled with the Spirit of grace. And so, we are called to a very intimate love relationship with God. And in that love, God calls us to remember we don't need to be afraid. We are not alone. God would no more abandon us than a mother loving her child could abandon her child. We can't stop our lungs from breathing oxygen. Well, unless they're dead. But God's not about to abandon those whom God loves, and Jesus died for the whole world to prove that God is for us, not against us, and God's love and grace are available. The question is, do you have the lungs for it? Do you have the faith to breathe in that loving grace, that presence, that goodness of God for you today? And so this ancient promise that God speaks to Israel when they are in exile and feeling worthless and abandoned and forsaken and forgotten, because they abandoned the covenant. They forsook God's commands. They didn't follow after the ways of love and justice. And so they felt like their exile was because they were unfaithful to the laws of Torah. And so they're feeling like, we're all alone. And here God speaks through Isaiah these words. But you, Israel, are my servant. You're Jacob, my first choice, descendants of my good friend Abraham. I pulled you in from all over the world, called you in from every dark corner of the earth, telling you you're my servant, serving on my side. I've picked you. I haven't dropped you. Don't panic. I'm with you. There's no need to fear, for I'm your God. I'll give you strength. I'll help you. I'll hold you steady and keep a firm grip on you. What a loving reminder. And if only we could be that faithful with each other and not give up on each other, but continue to not give in to fear, but to be there for each other and with each other. We live in such a sad time right now. People are just so broken and filled with violence and desperation and hate, rage, trauma, fear, driven to madness and destruction. Oh, for the love of God. Would that God, Spirit, would break into our reality again and bring us to our senses. Would that God would revive us again, fill the earth with the praise and the goodness of God. Oh, that the church would be strengthened and get on the right path instead of arguing and worrying about bills and petty concerns. When lives are at stake and there's a precious, beautiful world that God loves, and precious, beautiful children and elderly people and young men and young women, and human beings of all kinds, needing love and ready to give love. God is longing to fill us with God's goodness and God's favor, God's unmerited kindness. But we won't breathe in. We don't tell others. We don't show others. We don't share the grace of God enough. So God bless you when you and if you do. God bless all of us as we share this grace and kindness and love of God, and this encouragement and this hope that we have what we need. God has shown us the path, justice, goodness, of peace. Choose it. Choose it, people. Speak truth in love, not fear. The prayer focus for us today are students entering a new school. This is a reflection about a little girl and her relationship with her older sister. And I love this reflection because it's how love, it shows the sisterly love that looks out for each other and protects each other and is there for each other, the way God promises Isaiah that God's there for them. God won't leave them. God won't abandon them. That's how God calls us to be with each other. Siblings, family, connected, committed, and eager to share and support each other. And when those of us are immature and anxious and hurting and lost and in relationships and in stages of life where we do not know that what we're doing is hurtful, what we're doing is being immature. And people are doing the only thing they know, and that's not a wise thing, it's an immature thing. But it behooves all the rest of us to love all the more. The scriptures say those who are strong ought to bear the burdens of the weak. And not just throw each other under the bus, but long-suffering, patient love. And it is not easy. It is not something we can do on our own strength. We need to fill our own tanks so we can go the extra mile with those who are hurting. So, students entering a new school, they've got a tough row to hoe. That's hard. Lots of anxiety, lots of unknowns, lots of angst, and fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being good enough. Thank God when you've got a friend in high places. The way Cindy M. from Gauteng, South Africa, had a friend in her sister. Cindy writes, I was afraid when I first went to boarding school because I had heard nasty stories about boarding school life. But as our parents dropped my sister and me off at school, my sister said, being a first-year student can be hectic. Senior students may give you a hard time. They might even take your belongings without your consent. You are lucky because I will always be there for you. And my sister's words took away my fear. Knowing that my sister would take care of me brought some relief. How much more encouragement, strength, and comfort can we have in knowing that God is always there, ready to help us? Isaiah 41, verse 10, assures us that we have nothing to fear and no reason to be dismayed. Although God does not promise us a life free of troubles, God promises to be present, to give us strength for those troubles, and to uphold us with God's righteous right hand. And God's promises are forever. When others try to tear us down and we feel that we cannot overcome, we must remember that God is always with us and will uphold us. So the thought for the day is God is always near, protecting and upholding me. Now, how do you reconcile that? The troubles that you're going through or that maybe you've gone through? How is God protecting and upholding you? I mean, in my mind, as an earthly parent, my idea of protecting my child is to keep them from all harm and all struggle, right? Like I think of an infant, right? When they're helpless like that, you just, you lay your life down for them. I wrap myself around them, I hold them, I give them everything they need, support their head, support their little bodies, take care of every need. But actually, babies aren't helpless. A baby exercises agency from the time it's in the womb. And we have proof of this. I'm not making this up. Babies learn to self-soothe and exercise agency in doing that while they're in the uterus, in the womb, right? When they are learning to suckle, they suck their thumbs to comfort themselves and to meet that need. It's a very basic way that even babies, even an infant, a fetus, is exercising agency to care for itself. And so we're not entirely helpless. And we do what we can, and then the parent protects us and provides for the needs that we can't provide, right? So growing up, it's this partnership, this balance between God giving us what we can't get on our own, and we ourselves learning to give ourselves what we need that we can do. And when we go through struggles, when we go through terrible things, people, commit horrible crimes, sin against us, and people, do terrible things. And so how can we say God was protecting us and upholding us, and at the same time be experiencing a world filled with evil and struggle and pain and suffering? And see, that's the challenge of faith, for you to discern and sort that out. I've sorted it out. I could tell you, I could preach about it for days. But that's my experience of God upholding me and protecting me. I think one of the best ways God is protecting us is a metaphor that David uses in Psalm 23. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. A metaphor for the shepherd protecting the sheep and rescuing the sheep and fending off the wild animals with the rod, and the staff is used to pull the sheep back when they're stuck in the brambles, or when they are fall off a cliff and the shepherd has to reach them and hook them and bring them back, right? All the ways that God brings us back when we stray, that God woos us with God's love, that God heals us with beauty and kindness and brings people to us who are gentle and forgiving, and all the ways we experience love is God providing and protecting us. And see, when we go through painful things, our human tendency is to respond with pain, is to focus on all the hurt and all the ways where we're disappointed or dismayed or discouraged, and we focus on that. But if we know God is near, God is with us, and God is loving us and calling us to the path of love, then we have to focus on love. We have to focus on God's will and God's way. And that brings us out of our funk. It brings us out of our mental tunnel vision of only what we're afraid of or hurt by or angry about or disappointed by or grieving. Right? We look to the lighthouse, not just the storm. And then we're upheld. Then we have a way forward. That lighthouse of God's love and goodness, God's truth and kindness, forgiveness, all the things that Jesus tells us to do. That path is what upholds us and protects us from becoming ineffective and unproductive in our faith and in our knowledge of Jesus. We are protected from becoming the things that hate us and that hurt us when we follow God's way and focus on who God is. But if we're looking at and focused on the pain that people do to us, then we're just going to react with the same kind of pain back. So God is with you, friends. God is right there. Take a deep breath. Breathe in all that grace, all that love, all that hope, and the assuredness that where God is, there's joy and liberty and goodness and mercy, beauty. May you know the presence of God today and know that God is with you and God is upholding you with a righteous right hand, not a devious, punishing hand, but a hand of authority and power and love and grace. I'm glad you're with me on the journey.